The bathroom floor was cold against her cheek. Natalie Brooks pressed one hand to her swollen belly while the other clutched her phone, the eviction notice still glowing on the screen. 6 months pregnant, 3 jobs lost, and nobody knew the father's name. Nobody could know. Because Adrian Caruso didn't just own half of New York's underground. He owned her one perfect night, the night that created the life now kicking inside her. The night she ran from, terrified of what loving a monster would cost. Then the bathroom door exploded open, and the monster found her. If you're ready for a story about secrets that shatter, love that defends, and a family forged in fire, stay with me until the end. And when you do, smash that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see just how far Natalie's story travels. Natalie Brooks had learned early that survival in New York required 3 things: keeping your head down, your expenses lower, and your expectations at rock bottom. At 23, she'd mastered all 3. Her studio apartment in Washington Heights cost more than it was worth. Her business degree from community college gathered dust between shifts, and her dreams of opening her own consulting firm felt like jokes she'd told herself in another lifetime. Tonight, those dreams felt even more distant than usual. Table 12 needs another round, and the host wants you specifically for the VIP section. Marcus, the event coordinator, didn't look up from his clipboard. His tone suggested this wasn't a request. Natalie adjusted the too tight collar of her server's uniform and nodded. The Metropolitan Club was hosting some kind of private function, the kind where the guest list was shorter than the security detail, and every conversation happened in carefully modulated whispers. She'd been working events like this for 6 months, ever since her day job at the accounting firm cut her hours and her evening gig at the coffee shop couldn't cover the gap. The money was good. The clients were tolerable. And most importantly, nobody asked questions about who she was or where she was going. In a city of 8 million people, invisibility was its own kind of currency. She navigated through the crowd with practiced efficiency. Her tray balanced perfectly as she wove between clusters of men in suits that cost more than her annual rent. The Metropolitan Club dripped old money, crystal chandeliers, marble floors, oil paintings of men who'd been dead for centuries. It was the kind of place that made her acutely aware of every scuff on her shoes, every thread coming loose from her uniform. But it was also the kind of place where tips could cover a month of groceries in a single night. Table 12 sat in the corner, partially obscured by an ornate column. As Natalie approached, she noticed the men there first, broad-shouldered, watchful, with the kind of stillness that came from professional violence. Security, though not the legitimate kind. Their eyes tracked her movement with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Then she saw him. He sat at the center of the table like a king holding court, though his posture suggested he didn't need a throne to command authority. Dark hair, sharp features, and eyes that were simultaneously warm amber and cold calculation. He was younger than she expected, maybe early 30s, but he carried himself with the weight of someone who'd seen more than most people experienced in a lifetime. When his gaze lifted to meet hers, the room seemed to contract. "Your drinks," Natalie said, her voice steady despite the sudden hammer of her pulse. She set down the glasses with careful precision, whiskey neat, vodka rocks, something expensive and amber that she couldn't pronounce. "Can I get you anything else?" "Your name." The request came from him, delivered in a voice like smoke and expensive bourbon. It wasn't loud, but every man at the table stopped talking. "Natalie." The response left her mouth before she could consider whether giving her real name was wise. "Natalie." He repeated it like he was testing the weight of it, seeing how it felt. "I'm Adrian." She should have walked away, should have offered a polite smile, collected her tip, and disappeared back into the anonymity of the serving staff. But something in his expression held her there. Not threat exactly, but a kind of magnetic gravity that made leaving feel impossible. "Is there anything else you need, Mr.?" "Adrian is fine." He leaned back in his chair, still watching her with that unsettling focus. "And yes, I need you to tell me something." "Sir? What does someone like you dream about?" The question landed like a stone in still water, rippling outward into territory that had nothing to do with drink orders or professional service. Natalie felt her cheeks warm, felt the attention of every man at the table shift to her like searchlights. "I dream about getting off this shift before my feet fall off," she said, aiming for lightness. Adrian's mouth curved, Not quite a smile, but close. Liar. The word should have been an insult. Instead, it felt like an invitation. I should get back to work, Natalie managed, already stepping away. But his voice followed her. I'll see you again, Natalie. It wasn't a question. It was a certainty. The rest of the night passed in a blur of drink orders and careful navigation through rooms full of people who existed in a different stratosphere of wealth and power. But Natalie couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time she circled back through the main hall, she felt Adrian's gaze find her, track her, hold her in place even when she was 20 feet away. It should have been unnerving. Instead, it felt like standing in sunlight after months in shadow. By the time the event wound down, Natalie's feet were screaming and her lower back had developed a permanent ache. She collected her tips, better than expected, and was counting them in the service corridor when Marcus appeared. VIP wants to see you, he said. Natalie's stomach dropped. Which one? The one who owns the building. Marcus's expression was carefully neutral, but she caught the warning in his eyes. Don't keep him waiting. She should have refused, should have claimed exhaustion or another commitment or any of the dozens of excuses that would have gotten her out of whatever this was. But curiosity, or maybe something more dangerous, propelled her forward. The private suite was on the top floor, accessible only by a key-coded elevator that Marcus operated himself before leaving her alone in the ascending silence. When the doors opened, Natalie stepped into a space that redefined luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Manhattan skyline, furniture that looked like art installations, and Adrian standing by the bar with 2 glasses already poured. You came, he said. You asked. Natalie stayed near the elevator, her exit strategy firmly in mind. What did you need? To talk to you without an audience. He crossed to her, moving with the kind of controlled grace that suggested violence was always an option but rarely necessary. Up close, he was even more devastating, tall enough that she had to tilt her head back, with features that were too sharp to be conventionally handsome but somehow more compelling for it. You're afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but Natalie answered anyway. Should I be? Probably. His honesty was startling. But I'd rather you weren't. He offered her one of the glasses, something that smelled expensive and faintly of caramel. Natalie took it but didn't drink, her mind running through every true crime podcast she'd ever ignored the warnings from. What do you want? She asked quietly. To know you. Adrian's gaze held hers, unblinking. To understand what makes someone work 3 jobs and still show up with kindness for strangers who don't deserve it. How do you know about my other jobs? I asked. Simple, direct, terrifying. You work at Morrison & Associates during the day, the Blue Line Cafe in the evenings, and events like tonight on weekends. You're finishing a business degree online. You've lived in the same apartment for 2 years. You send money to your mother in Pennsylvania every month. And you haven't taken a vacation since you moved to New York. Natalie set the glass down carefully, fighting the urge to run. That's invasive. I know. Adrian moved to the windows, giving her space. I wanted to make sure you were real. As opposed to what? As opposed to another beautiful face working an angle. He glanced back at her, and something in his expression shifted. Vulnerability, maybe, or exhaustion. In my world, everyone wants something, usually power, sometimes money, occasionally revenge. He paused. But you looked at me like I was just a man who needed a drink refilled. You are just a man who needed a drink refilled. No, Natalie, I'm really not. The weight behind those words settled into the space between them like smoke. Natalie should have pressed the elevator button, should have walked away from whatever this was before it consumed her. But instead, she heard herself ask, Then who are you? Someone who makes problems disappear. Someone people fear and respect in equal measure. Someone who spent the last 10 years building an empire that runs on loyalty and blood. His voice was steady, matter of fact. Someone who saw you and thought, for the first time in a decade, that maybe there was something worth wanting besides power. Natalie's breath caught. The smart thing would be to leave. The safe thing would be to forget this conversation, this man, this moment. But something in his confession resonated with the loneliness she'd been carrying for so long, she'd forgotten it had a name. One drink, she said finally. Then I go home. Adrian's smile was slow and genuine. One drink. One drink became two. Two became a conversation that spiraled into territory Natalie had never expected: philosophy and ambition, fear and hope, the strange mathematics of surviving in a city that consumed people like kindling. Adrian spoke with the careful precision of someone who weighed every word, but beneath it was a hunger that matched her own. Not for things or status, but for connection, for being seen. You don't talk like a criminal, Natalie said at some point past midnight, the Manhattan skyline glittering beyond the windows. What do criminals talk like? I don't know, more threatening? The truly dangerous ones don't need to threaten. Adrian refilled her glass. She'd switched to water an hour ago, but he was still working on the same whiskey. They simply are. People feel it and adjust accordingly. Is that what you are? Truly dangerous? He studied her for a long moment, amber eyes unreadable. Yes, but not to you. How can you be sure? Because hurting you would be like destroying art, pointless and tragic. The words landed in her chest like a physical thing, warm and terrifying. Natalie stood, suddenly needing distance, needing air. I should go. Stay. One word. Not a command, a request. And the vulnerability in it undid something in Natalie's carefully constructed defenses. Why? She asked. Because in my entire life, I've never met anyone who looked at me the way you do. Like I might actually be human. Adrian moved closer, but didn't touch her. Stay, Natalie. Please. She should have left, should have run, should have done any of the 1,000 smart things that would have kept her safe. Instead, she stayed. The night unfurled like a dream, conversation bleeding into confession, confession into connection that felt electric and inevitable. When Adrian finally kissed her, it was with the gentleness of someone handling something precious. When she kissed him back, it was with 6 months of loneliness and exhaustion finally finding release. Are you sure? He asked against her mouth, giving her every opportunity to retreat. No, Natalie admitted, but I don't want to leave. Then stay. And she did. Morning arrived with cruel brightness, sunlight streaming through windows Natalie didn't recognize. For a moment, she simply existed in the warmth of the bed, the unfamiliar weight of Adrian's arm across her waist, the quiet peace of being held. Then reality crashed down like a building collapse. She'd slept with a stranger, a powerful, dangerous stranger who'd investigated her life and admitted to making problems disappear. What did that mean? What had she done? Natalie extracted herself carefully, gathering her clothes with hands that shook. She was halfway dressed when Adrian's voice stopped her. Leaving without saying goodbye? He was awake, watching her with those two sharp eyes. In the morning light, he looked younger, vulnerable almost. But Natalie had seen enough of the world to know that vulnerability could be performance. I have work, she said, which was true. Thank you for last night. Natalie, I really do have to go. She was out the door before he could stop her, running for the elevator like the floor was on fire. Her phone showed 6 missed calls from Marcus and a text that made her stomach drop. Need to talk. Important. The conversation happened in Marcus's office, a cramped space that smelled of coffee and desperation. He looked at her with something between pity and fear. The man you were with last night, Marcus said carefully. Do you know who he is? Adrian. Natalie's voice felt distant, disconnected. He said he makes problems disappear. Natalie, he's Adrian Caruso, as in Caruso family, as in the Mafia. The word landed like a gunshot. Natalie felt the blood drain from her face, felt the room tilt sideways. What? He's not just connected, Nat. He runs it. Half the city pays him protection money. The other half is too afraid to admit he exists. Marcus leaned forward, urgent. What did you tell him? Nothing. Everything. I don't... Natalie couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Oh my God. You need to stay away from him. Far away. These people don't just break hearts, they break bones. They make examples. Marcus's expression was grim. Promise me you'll stay away. Natalie nodded mechanically, her mind racing. A mafia boss. She'd slept with a mafia boss, had trusted him, had believed for one perfect night that she might have found something real. How could she have been so stupid? The next 2 weeks passed in a haze of paranoia and regret. Natalie changed her route to work, stopped going to familiar places, avoided anywhere Adrian might think to look for her. Her phone buzzed constantly with unknown numbers that she never answered. Flowers arrived at her apartment with no card. Once, she saw a black car idling outside her building and spent 3 hours hiding in a neighbor's apartment until it left. She told herself she was being careful, practical, smart. She didn't admit, even to herself, that she was also heartbroken. Work became her refuge, the mindless routine of coffee orders and accounting spreadsheets, a welcome distraction from the thoughts that ambushed her in quiet moments. She was good at compartmentalizing, at shoving down feelings until they fossilized into something manageable. But some things refused to be ignored. It started with exhaustion that no amount of sleep could touch, then nausea that made her morning coffee routine impossible. When her period was a week late, she told herself it was stress. 2 weeks late, and she bought a pregnancy test with cash, in a pharmacy 3 neighborhoods away from her apartment. The 2 pink lines appeared before she'd even finished peeing. Natalie sat on the bathroom floor of her apartment, staring at the test in her shaking hands. This wasn't possible. They'd used protection. They'd been careful, except they hadn't been, not really. Because she'd trusted him. Because it had felt safe. Because for one perfect night, she'd forgotten that safety was an illusion and trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. She was pregnant, with a mafia boss's baby. The laugh that escaped her throat was more sob than humor. The first decision was easy. She was keeping the baby. Natalie had never been particularly maternal, had never planned for children this early, but the moment she saw those pink lines, something fierce and protective unfurled in her chest. This was hers. This life growing inside her was hers to protect. The second decision was harder. She couldn't tell Adrian. Men like him didn't do family. They did control. He'd already proven he could find out everything about her life with a few phone calls. What would he do with this information? Take the baby? Use it to bind her to him? Make her disappear to protect his reputation? Natalie spent 3 days researching what happened to women who got involved with organized crime families. The stories she found were uniformly terrible. Threats, manipulation, children used as leverage. Women who tried to leave and vanished. Women who stayed and wished they'd vanished. She would not be one of those women. The plan formed in pieces, assembled from panic and determination. Move apartments, change her phone number, quit the event job. Tell her other employers she was relocating for family reasons. Disappear into the city's 8 million anonymous faces and raise this baby alone. It wasn't a good plan, but it was better than the alternative. Finding a new apartment on her salary proved nearly impossible. Everything affordable was a shoebox or a health hazard, and anything livable required 3 months' rent up front that she didn't have. Natalie finally settled on a 4th-floor walk-up in Queens, a place with water stains on the ceiling and neighbors who played salsa music at volumes that violated the Geneva Convention. But it was hers. And more importantly, it wasn't connected to Adrian. Changing her phone number was easier. A new SIM card, a promise to herself that she'd only give the number to people who absolutely needed it. She blocked Adrian's number on her old phone before disposing of it in a dumpster 6 blocks from her new apartment, trying not to think about the messages she'd never read. Quitting the Metropolitan Club required a conversation with Marcus that she'd been dreading. "You're leaving?" He looked genuinely distressed. "Natalie, the Caruso thing, if that's what this is about, I really think you're overreacting. He hasn't caused any problems. Hell, he's been asking about you constantly, and I keep telling him you requested a schedule change." "It's not about him," Natalie lied. I just need a change. Is everything okay? You look..." "I'm fine. Just tired." Another lie. But Marcus seemed to accept it. The hardest part was the loneliness. Natalie had never been particularly social. Her work schedule made friendships difficult, and most of her college classmates had scattered after graduation. But actively isolating herself, cutting ties with anyone who might lead Adrian back to her, felt like voluntary imprisonment. She attended her prenatal appointments alone, filled out intake forms with her new address and new phone number, and tried not to think about how Adrian had looked in the morning light, younger, vulnerable, almost hopeful. It didn't matter what he'd looked like. What mattered was keeping this baby safe. By her second trimester, Natalie had settled into a new routine. Work at Morrison and Associates during the day, online classes in the evening, prenatal vitamins and doctor's appointments on weekends. She'd picked up a weekend shift at a small grocery store to replace the Metropolitan Club income. And between that and her accounting work, she was just barely making rent. The pregnancy itself was progressing normally, if exhaustingly. Her doctor assured her that the nausea would pass, that the fatigue was temporary, that everything was developing as it should. Natalie tried to find comfort in the clinical certainty, tried not to think about how terrified she was. She was going to be a mother, a single mother, in New York City, with a business degree she'd never get to use and a secret that could destroy her life if it ever came to light. Some nights, alone in her apartment with her hand on her growing belly, Natalie let herself wonder what would have happened if Adrian had been anyone else. If he'd been an accountant or a teacher or a bartender, someone safe, someone normal. Would she have stayed? Would they have built something together? But he wasn't anyone else. He was a criminal, and she was carrying his child, and those two facts existed in permanent, irreconcilable conflict. So she pushed the wondering aside and focused on survival. The pregnancy started showing around 4 months, a gentle swell that she could hide under loose sweaters but couldn't ignore. Her coworkers at Morrison and Associates noticed but were too polite to comment directly, though she caught the looks, the whispered conversations that died when she entered rooms. Let them wonder. Let them gossip. As long as they didn't ask questions, she could maintain the fiction of normalcy. The grocery store was less subtle. Her manager, a perpetually exhausted woman named Rita, cornered her during a shift break. "You doing okay?" Rita asked, nodding toward Natalie's stomach. "Got support? Family?" "I'm managing." "That's not what I asked." Natalie appreciated the directness, even as it made her want to cry. "The father isn't in the picture. My mom's in Pennsylvania, but we're not close. I'm handling it." Rita studied her with the kind of maternal concern that made Natalie's defenses crack. "You need anything? Time off for appointments? Someone to cover a shift? You tell me, okay?" "Okay." The word came out smaller than Natalie intended. That small kindness, offered without judgment or expectation, carried her through the next month. When morning sickness made her shift at Morrison unbearable, Rita adjusted her grocery store schedule. When a prenatal appointment ran long, her supervisor at the accounting firm looked the other way. Natalie was surviving. Barely, exhaustingly, but surviving. Until the eviction notice arrived. It came on a Tuesday, slipped under her door in an official-looking envelope that made her stomach drop before she'd even opened it. The landlord was selling the building. All tenants had 60 days to vacate. No exceptions. Natalie read the letter 3 times, hoping the words would change. They didn't. 60 days to find a new apartment, while pregnant, while working 2 jobs, while trying to save enough for the hospital bills that were approaching like a freight train. She spent that entire evening searching rental listings, her growing panic matched only by her dwindling bank account. Everything in her price range was either too far from work or structurally unsound. Anything better required deposits she didn't have and background checks she couldn't risk. By midnight, she was crying on her bathroom floor, one hand pressed to her belly where the baby had started kicking, gentle flutters that felt like questions she couldn't answer. "I don't know what to do," she whispered to the life inside her. "I don't know how to fix this." The baby kicked again, oblivious to the impossible situation they were both trapped in. The next 4 weeks were a masterclass in desperation. Natalie worked every shift available, picked up extra hours, skipped meals to save money. She filled out apartment applications and bathroom stalls during breaks, lied on intake forms about her employment history, and tried not to think about what would happen if she couldn't find a place in time. Homelessness. That was what would happen. Homelessness while pregnant in New York in winter. The thought kept her awake most nights, staring at water stains on the ceiling and doing math that never quite added up. She needed first month's rent, last month's rent, security deposit, and enough left over for food and medical bills. The numbers refused to cooperate. By week 6, Natalie had been rejected by 14 different landlords. Too many jobs suggested instability. Not enough income history. No cosigner. Pregnant applicants were a liability. She stopped eating lunch to save money. Wore the same 3 outfits to work because she couldn't afford laundry. Started walking the 4 miles between her apartment and Morrison and Associates to save on subway fare. Her body, already taxed by pregnancy, began to fail. She was dizzy constantly. Her hands shook, and the darkness around her eyes made her look like she'd been in a fight. Rita noticed first. "You need to eat. I don't care what your situation is. You need to eat." "I'm fine." "Bullshit," Rita's voice was sharp. "You're running yourself into the ground, and that baby you're carrying deserves better." The words hit like a slap, true and terrible. Natalie opened her mouth to argue, to defend herself, to maintain the pretense that she had everything under control. And then her vision went dark around the edges. She woke up on the break room floor, Rita's concerned face hovering above her. "You passed out," Rita said. "I'm calling an ambulance." "No!" The panic was immediate and overwhelming. "No ambulance, I can't afford—" "Then you're going to the clinic down the street, and I'm going with you." No room for argument. The clinic visit revealed what Natalie had been trying to ignore. She was severely dehydrated, anemic, and undernourished. The doctor, a tired woman with kind eyes, asked careful questions about her living situation, her support system, her ability to care for herself. Natalie lied through most of it. Yes, she had family nearby. Yes, she was eating regularly. Yes, she had stable housing. The doctor didn't believe her but prescribed iron supplements and prenatal vitamins anyway, along with strict instructions to rest and eat properly. Rest. Eat properly. The instructions might as well have been sprout wings and fly. Rita drove her home in silence, pulled up outside the building where the "for sale" sign now dominated the front yard. "You're being evicted," Rita said. Not a question. Natalie nodded, too tired to lie. "And the father?" Not an option. Rita was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I have a cousin in Brooklyn. She rents rooms cheap, under the table. Want me to call her?" The relief was so sudden, so overwhelming, that Natalie started crying right there in the passenger seat. "Yes, please." "Okay." Rita's voice was gentle. "But you need to take care of yourself, Natalie. That baby can't grow if you're running on empty." "I know. I don't know how to do this." "Nobody does, honey, but you can't do it alone." The problem was, alone was all Natalie had. But Rita's cousin fell through. The room was already rented by the time Natalie called, and Brooklyn might as well have been Mars for all the good it did her. Back to the rental listings, back to the rejections, back to the mathematics of impossible choices. She was down to 2 weeks before eviction when she finally broke. It happened at Morrison and Associates during a late shift when the building was mostly empty. Natalie had been working through lunch, had been working through most meals lately, and the combination of hunger, exhaustion, and mounting panic finally overwhelmed her defenses. She made it to the bathroom before the sobs started, locking herself in a stall and sliding down the wall until she was sitting on the cold tile floor. Her hands found her belly, now round and undeniable, and the baby kicked against her palms like it was trying to comfort her. "I'm so sorry," Natalie whispered. "I'm trying, I promise I'm trying." But trying wasn't enough. Trying didn't pay rent or find apartments or make food magically appear. Trying was just another word for failing slowly. She didn't hear the bathroom door open, didn't hear the footsteps, didn't realize she wasn't alone until a shadow fell across the stall door and a voice she'd spent 6 months trying to forget spoke her name. "Natalie." Her head snapped up, heart hammering. Through the gap at the bottom of the stall, she could see expensive shoes. Designer, the kind Adrian wore. "No," she breathed. "No, no, no." "Open the door." His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Worry, maybe, or anger. "Please, go away. I've been looking for you for 6 months. I'm not going anywhere." Natalie's hands shook as she reached for the lock. What choice did she have? He'd found her. After all her precautions, all her careful planning, he'd found her anyway. The lock clicked. The door swung open. And Adrian Caruso, the most dangerous man in New York, looked down at her pregnant belly with an expression of absolute shock. "Oh my God," he said softly. Then, sharper. "Is it mine?" Natalie could have lied, should have lied, but she was so tired of lying, so tired of running, so tired of carrying this alone. Yes, she whispered. The word hung between them like a detonation. Adrian didn't move, didn't speak. For a long moment, he simply stared at her belly with an expression Natalie couldn't decipher, shock bleeding into something darker, something that made her instinctively curl her arms around herself. Then his jaw tightened, and when he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. How long have you known? 6 weeks after I left. The admission came out barely above a whisper. 6 weeks. He repeated the words like they were foreign, incomprehensible. You've known for 5 months that you're carrying my child, and you said nothing. I couldn't. The word cracked through the bathroom like a gunshot. You couldn't send a message? Make a phone call? You couldn't give me the chance to... He stopped, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Do you have any idea what I thought? What I've been imagining for 6 months? Natalie struggled to her feet, using the stall wall for support. Her legs shook, whether from malnutrition or fear she couldn't tell. You investigated my entire life after one conversation. You admitted you make problems disappear. What was I supposed to think would happen if I told you? That I'd take care of you. Adrian's voice rose, then dropped again, forced back under control. That I'd make sure you had everything you needed. That I'd... He looked at her properly then, seemed to register the dark circles under her eyes, the way her clothes hung loose everywhere except her belly, the tremor in her hands. When did you last eat? That's not... When, Natalie? Yesterday, maybe the day before. I don't remember. The muscle in his jaw jumped. You're starving yourself while pregnant with my child. I'm not starving myself, I'm trying to survive. The words came out sharper than intended, propelled by months of fear and exhaustion. Do you know what it costs to be pregnant in this city with no insurance? Do you know what rent is? What it takes to keep 3 jobs while growing a human being inside you? No, Adrian said quietly, because you never gave me the chance to find out. The truth of that landed between them, complicated and messy. Natalie sagged against the bathroom wall, suddenly too tired to stand. I was protecting us. From me. From your world. She met his eyes, saw the hurt there beneath the anger. I researched you, Adrian. After Marcus told me who you really were, I found stories about women who got involved with men like you. What happened to them? What happened to their children? Her voice cracked. I couldn't let that be us. What stories? His voice had gone dangerously soft. Women who disappeared. Children used as leverage. Families torn apart because someone wanted revenge or power, or that those women weren't carrying my child. Adrian moved closer, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel the heat of him. Those children weren't mine. Do you really think so little of me that you believe I'd let harm come to you, to our baby? I don't know what to believe about you. The honesty felt like ripping open a wound. I spent one perfect night with a man I thought I knew, and then found out everything was a lie. I never lied to you. You didn't tell me the truth. Would you have stayed if I had? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. They both knew what the answer was. Natalie pressed her hand to her belly, felt the baby move. It doesn't matter now. What's done is done. You're right. What's done is done. Adrian's voice was firm, decided. And what's going to happen next is you're coming with me, now. I'm not going anywhere with you. Yes, you are. Because you're being evicted in 2 weeks, you haven't eaten in days, and you nearly passed out on this bathroom floor. He pulled out his phone. My driver will be here in 5 minutes. You can walk out with me voluntarily, or I can carry you. Your choice. The casualness of the threat made Natalie's temper flare. You can't just kidnap me. I'm not kidnapping you. I'm taking the mother of my child somewhere safe where she can be properly cared for. His expression softened slightly. Please, Natalie, let me help you. Help? She laughed, the sound bitter. Is that what you call it? What would you call it? Control, ownership, exactly what I was afraid of. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was measured, careful. I understand why you're afraid. I understand why you ran. But right now you need help whether you want to admit it or not. Your health is failing. You have no housing lined up. You're working yourself to death trying to do this alone. He paused. Let me take care of you, both of you, just until you're stable. And then what? Then we figure out what comes next, together. The word together felt like a trap and a lifeline in equal measure. Natalie wanted to refuse, wanted to cling to her independence even as it crumbled around her. But she was so tired, and the baby, their baby, deserved better than a mother who was slowly falling apart. "If I agree," she said slowly, "I want conditions." "Name them." "I'm not your prisoner. I can leave whenever I want." "Agreed." "You don't make decisions about my medical care without consulting me." "Of course." "And you don't—" Her voice wavered. "You don't try to take the baby from me, no matter what happens between us." The hurt that flashed across Adrian's face was genuine. "I would never, Natalie. I would never do that to you." She wanted to believe him. Desperately, dangerously, she wanted to believe him. "Okay," she whispered. Relief washed over his features. "Okay, come on, let's get you out of here." He offered his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Natalie took it. The drive to wherever Adrian was taking her passed in a blur of city lights and exhausted silence. Natalie sat in the back of the town car, expensive leather, tinted windows, the subtle scent of luxury, and tried to process what was happening. She'd spent 6 months running from this man, and now she was voluntarily entering his world. Was this survival or surrender? The baby kicked, and Natalie pressed her hand to the movement. Survival, she told herself. This was survival. The car pulled up to a building in Tribeca, all glass and steel and doormen who didn't ask questions. Adrian guided her through a lobby that looked like a magazine spread into a private elevator that required a key card. The penthouse, when they arrived, was stunning. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, furniture that was both beautiful and comfortable, and a kitchen that looked like it had never been used. "Guest room is this way," Adrian said, leading her down a hallway. "It has its own bathroom. There are clothes in the closet that should fit, at least for now. We'll get you properly outfitted tomorrow." The room was larger than her entire queen's apartment had been. The bed looked like a cloud. Natalie's exhaustion suddenly hit her like a physical weight. "I need you to eat something before you sleep," Adrian said gently. "What sounds manageable?" "I don't know, toast? Soup?" "I'll have both sent up. Sit down before you fall down." She obeyed, sinking onto the bed with a sigh that came from somewhere deep in her bones. Adrian disappeared, returned 10 minutes later with a tray containing toast, chicken soup, orange juice, and a bottle of prenatal vitamins. "Eat," he said, setting it on the bedside table. "All of it." "You're very bossy. You're very stubborn." But there was warmth in his voice, not anger. Natalie ate slowly, her stomach protesting the sudden influx of food after days of near starvation. Adrian sat in the chair by the window, watching her with an intensity that should have been uncomfortable, but somehow wasn't. "Why did you really run?" he asked quietly. "I told you I was scared." "Of me specifically, or of what I represent?" Natalie considered the question while chewing a piece of toast. "Both, neither, I don't know." She set down the spoon. "That night with you. It felt real. Like maybe I'd found something I didn't know I was looking for. And then Marcus told me who you were, and I realized I'd been living in a fantasy. What we had wasn't a fantasy. Wasn't it? You're a crime boss, Adrian. You run an empire built on violence and fear. That's not compatible with the life I want." "And what life do you want?" "Something normal, safe, boring, maybe, but mine." She looked at her belly. "A life where my child doesn't grow up afraid." "Your child won't grow up afraid," Adrian said firmly, "because I won't let anyone touch them, ever." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can. Do you know what I do, Natalie? Really do?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I protect people. I solve problems that the police can't or won't handle. I make sure the people under my protection can live their lives without fear of predators." "By being a predator yourself." "Sometimes." He didn't flinch from the accusation. "The world isn't clean or simple. Sometimes protecting people requires getting your hands dirty. But everything I do with purpose, with rules." "And what are your rules?" "No drugs, no human trafficking, no harming innocents." His voice was steel. "Anyone who violates those rules answers to me, personally." Natalie studied him in the lamplight. trying to reconcile the man who'd held her so gently with the criminal kingpin sitting across from her. Do you kill people? Yes. The honesty was somehow more frightening than a lie would have been. Often? Not anymore. These days I have people for that. He met her eyes. Does that terrify you? It should. But it doesn't? Natalie was quiet for a long moment, examining her own reactions. She should be terrified, should be planning her escape, should be protecting her child from this man and everything he represented. But instead, she felt safer than she had in months, which was either instinct or insanity. I don't know what I feel about you, she admitted. That's fair. I haven't exactly given you reasons to trust me. Adrian stood, moving to the door. Get some sleep. We'll talk more in the morning. Adrian? He paused, hand on the doorframe. Thank you, Natalie said quietly, for finding me, even though I didn't want to be found. His smile was small and genuine. Thank you for staying, even though you didn't want to stay. Then he was gone, and Natalie was alone in a room that cost more than she'd earned in a year, pregnant with the child of a man she barely knew and couldn't seem to stop trusting. She should have been afraid. Instead, for the first time in months, she slept. Morning arrived with sunlight and the smell of fresh coffee. Natalie woke disoriented, momentarily panicked by the unfamiliar ceiling before the previous night's events crashed back. Adrian. The penthouse. The admission that had changed everything. She found him in the kitchen, dressed casually in dark jeans and a Henley, cooking what appeared to be an elaborate breakfast. The domesticity of it was jarring. You cook, she said from the doorway. He glanced up, smiled. I live alone. It was learn or starve. He gestured to the table, where plates were already set. Sit. You need to eat. I'm not an invalid. No, but you are malnourished and pregnant. Humor me. The breakfast was better than anything Natalie had eaten in months. Fluffy omelets, perfectly crisp bacon, toast with real butter, fresh fruit that actually tasted like fruit. She tried to eat slowly, maintain some dignity, but her body had other ideas. Adrian watched her with something like satisfaction. Better? Much. She wiped her mouth with a napkin that probably cost more than her weekly grocery budget. So what happens now? Now we get you to a doctor. A real one, not a free clinic. He pulled out his phone. I have someone on retainer, best obstetrician in the city. She'll see you this afternoon. Adrian, I can't afford. You're not paying for it. I am. His tone left no room for argument. This is my child too, Natalie. Let me take care of you both. The words were reasonable, but something in Natalie bristled at the assumption of control. I need to call my work. Let them know I won't be in. Already done. I had my assistant call Morrison in the grocery store, told them you had a family emergency and would be taking a leave of absence. The bristle became outright irritation. You had no right to do that. You're correct. I apologize. Adrian set down his coffee cup. I'm used to solving problems quickly and efficiently. I didn't consider that you might want to handle those calls yourself. The genuine apology took some wind from Natalie's sails. I need some autonomy here, some control over my own life. Understood. What would you like to do today, besides the doctor's appointment? She considered. I need to go back to my apartment, get my things before the landlord disposes of them. I'll have movers handle it. Adrian, what? You're 6 months pregnant and recently malnourished. You're not hauling boxes up and down 4 flights of stairs. He stood clearing the dishes. We can go supervise if you want, but you're not doing the physical labor. It was hard to argue with logic that was actually protective rather than controlling. Fine, but I choose what comes and what stays. Of course. The apartment in Queens looked even more depressing in daylight, the water stains more prominent, the sounds of arguing neighbors clearer. Natalie directed the movers, 3 large men who clearly worked for Adrian and treated her with careful deference, while Adrian leaned against the doorframe, watching. This is where you've been living? His voice was carefully neutral, but she could hear the judgment underneath. It's what I could afford. It's a death trap. The wiring is probably from the 70s. That ceiling looks ready to collapse, and I can hear at least 3 different safety violations from here. Not all of us have penthouses in Tribeca. No, but you should have. He moved into the space, examining it with a critical eye. You should have been somewhere safe, somewhere with heat that works and locks that actually secure. Somewhere, he stopped, ran a hand through his hair. I'm sorry. I know this isn't helpful. No, you're right. It's terrible. Natalie sank onto the worn couch, the only piece of furniture she wasn't taking. But terrible was all I could manage. Adrian sat beside her, careful not to crowd her space. Will you tell me what the last 6 months were like for you? Really? So she did. She told him about the isolation, the constant fear of being found, the juggling of jobs and medical appointments, the missed meals and exhausted nights, the eviction notice that had finally broken her. She laid it all out, not looking for sympathy but needing him to understand the reality she'd been living. When she finished, Adrian was quiet for a long time. Then, I'm sorry you went through that alone. I'm sorry you felt you had to. I didn't see another option. I know, and that's on me. When we met, I didn't think about how my reputation might affect you, how it might make you feel unsafe. He turned to face her fully. I need you to understand something, Natalie. I would never hurt you. I would never use our child as leverage or control. Whatever happens between us, whether we figure out how to be together or just learn to co-parent, you and the baby will always be protected, always be safe. I swear it. How can you promise that? You have enemies, people who want to hurt you. And those people know that touching my family means their death. Not quick, not painless, just inevitable. The coldness in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. They also know that I keep my word, always. So when I promise you that no one will hurt you or our child, believe it. Natalie wanted to, desperately wanted to believe that this man could keep her safe, that loving him, because she was beginning to suspect that's what this dangerous feeling in her chest was, wouldn't destroy her. I'm trying to trust you, she said quietly. That's all I can ask. The doctor's appointment that afternoon was a revelation. Dr. Sarah Chen was a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense approach that Natalie appreciated immediately. The office was pristine, the equipment state-of-the-art, and the staff treated her like a person rather than a problem to be processed. Let's see how the baby is doing, Dr. Chen said, squeezing gel onto Natalie's belly for the ultrasound. Adrian stood beside the examination table, his hand finding Natalie's without conscious thought. She should have pulled away, maintained boundaries. Instead, she held on. The ultrasound screen flickered to life, and there, impossibly, miraculously, was their baby. Fully formed now, with tiny fingers and a face that looked almost human. Everything looks good, Dr. Chen said, moving the wand to get different angles. Growth is right on track. Heartbeat is strong. You're measuring at about 26 weeks. Is it? Adrian's voice was rough. Can you tell the gender? Dr. Chen smiled. Would you like to know? They both nodded. It's a boy. The words landed in the space between them, transforming abstract concept into concrete reality. A son. They were having a son. Natalie looked at Adrian and saw tears tracking down his face, silent, unchecked, genuine. The sight of this powerful, dangerous man crying over an ultrasound image did something to her carefully maintained defenses. A boy, Adrian whispered, squeezing her hand. We're having a boy. Yeah, Natalie managed. We are. After the appointment, Adrian insisted on taking her to lunch at a restaurant that required reservations made months in advance. The host took one look at him and found a table immediately. Do people always jump when you walk in? Natalie asked, scanning the menu that had no prices listed. Usually. Must be nice. It's useful. Nice is something different. He set down his menu. I want to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Natalie's stomach tightened. Okay. What do you want from me? Not what you think you should want or what would be easiest. What do you actually want? It was a dangerous question, one that required dangerous honesty. Natalie took a sip of water, buying time to organize her thoughts. I want our son to be safe, to grow up without fear. That's what you want for him. What about for you? I don't know if what I want is possible. Tell me anyway. She met his eyes across the table, saw genuine curiosity there, genuine care. I want someone who sees me, who understands that I'm not just the mother of your child, but a person with dreams and goals and a life beyond this situation. Her voice dropped. I want someone who makes me feel the way you did that first night. Like I matter. Like I'm not invisible. You've never been invisible to me, Natalie, not for a single moment. And that terrifies me, because you're not supposed to be what I want. The admission felt like stepping off a cliff. You're everything I should run from, but when I'm with you, I feel safer than I've felt in years. How is that possible? Maybe because you know, on some level, that I mean what I say, that when I promise to protect you, I will. Adrian leaned forward. I know my world is dangerous. I know what I am, but I can keep you separate from the worst of it. I can give you the life you want, the safety, the stability, the chance to build something of your own. In exchange for what? Nothing. There's no exchange. You're the mother of my child. That alone means you get everything I have to offer. And if I want more than protection, what if I want... She stopped, unable to finish the thought. What if you want me? Adrian's voice was gentle. Then you can have that too. But on your timeline, your terms. I'm not going anywhere, Natalie. We have time to figure this out. The waiter arrived with their food, interrupting the moment. They ate in companionable silence, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. Natalie tried to imagine a future where this worked, where she could have Adrian and safety and the normal life she wanted for her son. The pieces didn't quite fit, but maybe that was okay. Maybe life was messier than she'd been giving it credit for. I need to tell you something, Adrian said as they finished eating, about why I was so desperate to find you. Okay? That night we spent together, it wasn't just physical for me. I know it might have seemed that way given how fast things moved, but you did something no one else has ever done. He paused, choosing his words carefully. You made me want to be better, to be the man you saw when you looked at me, instead of the man everyone else fears. Adrian, let me finish. When you disappeared, I thought I'd lost my chance at that, at being someone worth knowing. I searched for you because I needed to know if what we had was real, or if I'd imagined the whole thing. He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. And then I found you on that bathroom floor, pregnant and alone, and I realized I'd failed you before I even had the chance to try. You ran because I was exactly what you feared, a monster. You're not a monster. I'm something close enough that you couldn't risk trusting me with the truth about our child. That's on me, Natalie. All of it. His grip tightened. But I'm asking for a chance to prove I can be different, that I can be what you and our son need. Natalie turned her hand over, lacing her fingers through his. I'm scared. So am I. Of what? Of failing you again. Of being the reason our son grows up without a father. His voice was raw with honesty. Of loving you and having you realize you deserve better. The confession hung in the air between them, vulnerable and true. Natalie squeezed his hand, felt the calluses there, the strength. I think we're both pretty terrified. Yeah, we are. Adrian smiled, sad and genuine. But maybe we can be terrified together. It wasn't a declaration of love, wasn't a promise of forever, but it was honest, and in that moment, honesty was enough. The next few weeks settled into an unexpected rhythm. Natalie lived in the guest room of Adrian's penthouse, maintaining the fiction of boundaries while gradually letting them blur. He was respectful, careful not to push, but his presence was constant, making sure she ate, accompanying her to medical appointments, quietly rearranging his life to accommodate hers. She started to see the patterns of his work, the phone calls that came at odd hours, the meetings that happened behind closed doors. Once she woke at 3 a.m. to find him sitting in the living room, blood on his knuckles and exhaustion in his eyes. Don't ask, he'd said quietly. So she didn't. She'd brought him ice for his hands and sat with him in the darkness until his breathing steadied. Some truths didn't need words, but mostly, life was surprisingly normal. They watched movies together, argued about baby names, assembled furniture for the nursery Adrian insisted on setting up. Natalie enrolled in online classes again, picked up the pieces of the business degree she'd abandoned. Adrian hired a tutor to help her when coursework got overwhelming. You don't have to do this, she'd said when the tutor first arrived. I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it for our son. Adrian's smile had been genuine. He deserves a mother who achieves her dreams. It was gestures like that, quiet, thoughtful, completely unexpected, that slowly dismantled her defenses. She was falling for him, she realized. Not the sanitized version she'd met that first night, but the complicated, dangerous, surprisingly gentle man who made her breakfast and checked her ankles for swelling and read parenting books when he thought she wasn't looking. The realization should have terrified her. Instead, it felt inevitable. They were having dinner. Adrian had cooked again, something with pasta and vegetables that actually tasted good. When his phone buzzed, he glanced at it and his entire demeanor changed. "I need to take this," he said, already standing. "It's important." He disappeared into his office. Natalie continued eating, trying not to eavesdrop, but his voice carried through the door, sharp, angry, commanding. When he emerged 20 minutes later, his face was stone. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing you need to worry about." "Adrian, it's handled." But his jaw was tight, his hands clenched. "If this affects me or the baby, I have a right to know." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Someone made a move against one of my operations, tried to use it as leverage to renegotiate our arrangement. And I reminded them why that's a bad idea." His voice was flat, emotionless. "They won't make that mistake again." "Did you?" Natalie couldn't finish the question. "No, I didn't kill anyone, but I made my point clearly enough that I won't need to." He moved to the window, looking out over the city. "This is what my life is, Natalie. Problems and solutions, threats and responses. It's not clean." "I'm not asking for clean. I'm asking for honest." He turned to face her. "Then here's honest. There are people who would hurt you to get to me. People who see you and our son as leverage, as weakness. And every single one of them knows that touching you means death. I've made that very, very clear." "How? Do you really want details?" She considered. "No, but I want to know, if someone comes for us, what happens?" "They die. Slowly. No hesitation, no remorse. And everyone they've ever cared about learns what happens when you threaten Adrian Caruso's family. The casual brutality of it should have sent her running. Instead, Natalie felt something else. A primal satisfaction that this man, this dangerous, powerful man, would burn the world down to keep them safe. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay. I trust you to protect us. I don't need to know how." The relief on his face was palpable. "Thank you." That night, as Natalie lay in bed feeling the baby move, she thought about trust and fear and the complicated calculus of loving someone dangerous. She'd spent 6 months running from Adrian, convinced that his world would destroy her. But maybe destruction was just changed by another name. Maybe being with him meant letting go of who she thought she needed to be and accepting who she actually was. Someone brave enough to love a monster. Someone strong enough to build a family from fear. Someone willing to trust that safety and danger could coexist, that love could bloom in unexpected soil, that happy endings weren't always simple or clean. She fell asleep with her hand on her belly and Adrian's promise echoing in her mind. "They won't touch you, ever." And for the first time since seeing those 2 pink lines, Natalie believed in something beyond survival. She believed in them. The nightmare came 3 weeks later, in the form of a black sedan parked outside Dr. Chen's office. Natalie didn't notice it at first. She was too focused on the fact that she'd just seen their son's face in 3D ultrasound, watched him yawn and stretch in her womb, heard Dr. Chen declare everything perfect. Adrian walked beside her, his hand at the small of her back, discussing nursery paint colors with an intensity that would have been funny if it wasn't so endearing. Then she saw his expression change. It happened in an instant, the warmth draining from his face, his posture shifting from relaxed to predatory. His hand moved from her back to her arm, grip firm but not painful. "Get in the car," he said quietly. "Now." "What's wrong?" "Don't look, just walk." He guided her toward his town car, which had pulled up to the curb with suspicious timing. "Marcus, take her home. Direct route, no stops." "Adrian, you're scaring me." He opened the car door, helped her inside with hands that were gentle despite the urgency. "You're safe. I promise you're safe. But I need to handle something, and I need you gone before I do." "Handle what?" But he was already closing the door, already turning toward the black sedan with a walk that promised violence. Natalie twisted in her seat, watching through the rear window as Adrian approached the other car. Two men got out, big, dangerous looking, the kind who made their living through intimidation. "Ma'am, we need to go," Marcus said from the driver's seat. "What's happening?" "Mr. Caruso will explain when he gets home. Right now, my job is getting you to safety." The car pulled away before Natalie could protest. She watched through the window until Adrian and the two men disappeared from view, her heart hammering against her ribs. The baby kicked, responding to her elevated pulse, and she pressed her hand to the movement. "It's okay," she whispered. "Your father knows what he's doing." She hoped that was true. The penthouse felt like a cage when they arrived. Marcus escorted her inside, then positioned himself by the elevator with the kind of alertness that suggested he was expecting trouble. Natalie paced the living room, her phone clutched in one hand, willing it to ring. It took 2 hours. When Adrian finally walked through the door, his knuckles were split, and there was blood on his shirt that she was fairly certain wasn't his. But he was whole, and the relief that flooded through her was so intense it made her knees weak. "What happened?" she demanded. "Sit down, please." He moved to the bar, poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey, and downed it in one swallow. "That was a message." "From who?" "The Volkov family. Russian outfit out of Brighton Beach." He poured another drink but didn't touch it. "They've been pushing into my territory for months. Today they decided to make a point by showing up where you were vulnerable." The words landed like ice water. "They were there for me?" "Not to hurt you. To show me they could reach you if they wanted to." His jaw was tight with barely controlled rage. "It was a mistake they won't make twice." "Adrian, what did you do?" "What I had to." He met her eyes, and she saw the violence there, the cold calculation. "I made it very clear that you and our son are off limits, that even looking at you wrong would be considered an act of war. And they just accepted that?" "They will. Once they find what I left them." His voice was flat, emotionless. "I'm sorry you had to see that. See me like that. But they needed to understand the consequences." Natalie should have been horrified, should have been planning her escape. Instead, she moved to him, took the glass from his hand, and set it aside. "Are we safe?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about him. "I won't let anyone touch you, Natalie. I swear it." She believed him. That was the terrifying part. She absolutely believed him. But belief didn't stop the fear that crept in later, when she was alone in the guest room with her thoughts. The Volkovs had found her at the doctor's office, which meant they'd been watching, gathering information, waiting for an opportunity. How many other people knew where she was? How many other families might see her as leverage? Sleep came fitfully, plagued by dreams of black sedans and men with cold eyes. She woke before dawn, sweat-soaked and shaking, to find Adrian sitting in the chair by her window. "How long have you been there?" she asked. "Few hours. You were having nightmares." He moved to the bed, sat on the edge. "Want to talk about it?" "Not really." "Okay." He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm increasing security. Marcus will be with you whenever you leave the penthouse. I'm also having the building systems upgraded. Better cameras, better locks, better everything." "Will it be enough?" "It has to be." His voice was grim. "I can't lose you, Natalie. Either of you." The confession hung between them, raw and honest. Natalie reached for his hand, laced their fingers together. "I'm scared." "I know. So am I." "What are you afraid of?" "That I've dragged you into a war you didn't sign up for. That loving me will get you killed." He squeezed her hand. "That our son will grow up without a mother because I wasn't careful enough." "You can't think like that." "Can't I?" "You were right to run from me, Natalie. You were right to be afraid. My world is dangerous, and now you're in it whether you chose to be or not." She sat up, ignoring her body's protest. "Then help me understand it. Stop trying to protect me from the truth, and just tell me what we're dealing with." Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then he started talking. He told her about the structure of his organization, the families that operated in New York, the delicate balance of power that kept the city from descending into outright war. He explained about territories and tribute, about the rules that governed their world, and the consequences for breaking them. He was honest about the violence, about the people who died by his order, about the blood on his hands that no amount of washing would ever clean. The Volkovs are new, he said. They came over 5 years ago, started small, grew ambitious. They don't respect the old rules, don't understand the ecosystem we've built. They see weakness where there's actually strength through cooperation. And they think I'm your weakness. They're right. You are. He met her eyes. You and our son are the only weakness I have, which makes you the most dangerous thing in my life and the most precious. Do you understand what that means? That you'll do anything to protect us. That I'll burn down the entire city if that's what it takes. No hesitation, no doubt. The Volkovs miscalculated today. They thought showing they could reach you would make me negotiate. Instead, it made me realize I need to eliminate them completely. The casual way he discussed elimination made Natalie's stomach tighten. What does that mean? It means war. Real war, not the posturing we've been doing. He stood, moved to the window. I've been trying to avoid it, trying to find a peaceful solution. But they crossed a line today. They threatened you. And that changes everything. Adrian, I don't want you to start a war because of me. It's not because of you. It's because they're a cancer that needs to be cut out before it spreads. He turned back to her. But make no mistake, you're the catalyst. You and our son. You're what finally made me willing to do what needs to be done. The weight of that responsibility settled over Natalie like a shroud. How long will it take? The war? Weeks, maybe a month if they're stubborn. His voice was clinical, detached. I have more resources, more loyalty, better positioning. They'll fall. It's just a matter of how much damage they do on the way down. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you stay here, safe, protected. He came back to the bed, knelt beside it so they were eye level. I know you hate feeling caged. I know this isn't the life you wanted, but I need you to trust me, just for a little while longer. Natalie looked at him. This man who turned her world upside down, who made her feel safe and terrified in equal measure, who was willing to wage war to protect their unborn child. I trust you, but I need something from you too. Name it. When this is over, when the Volkovs are gone and things are stable, I want you to step back, not from me or the baby, but from the worst of it, the violence, the constant danger. She took his hand, placed it on her belly where their son was moving. I need to know that our son won't grow up watching his father become a monster. I'm already a monster, Natalie. No, you're a man who does monstrous things when necessary. That's different. She covered his hand with hers. Promise me you'll try. That you'll at least consider building something legitimate, something our son can be proud of. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he might refuse. Then, I promise. When this is over, I'll start transitioning to legitimate business. It won't be fast and it won't be clean, but I'll do it. Thank you. He leaned forward, pressed his forehead against hers. I love you. I should have said it before, but I'm saying it now. I love you, Natalie Brooks. Completely. Terrifyingly. Forever. The words should have felt too soon, too intense. Instead, they felt inevitable. I love you too. Which is either the smartest or stupidest thing I've ever admitted. Probably both. His smile was genuine, warm. Come back to bed. You need rest. Will you stay? As long as you want me to. So he climbed into bed beside her, fully clothed, and held her while she drifted back to sleep. And for a few hours, the world outside didn't matter. There was just the two of them and the life growing between them, building something fragile and precious in the darkness. The war with the Volkovs started 2 days later. Natalie didn't witness it directly. Adrian made sure she was insulated from the worst of it, but she felt its effects. The penthouse became a fortress. Security doubled and then tripled. Adrian left for meetings that lasted hours, came back with exhaustion etched into every line of his face. Phone calls happened at all hours, always in Russian or Italian or other languages she didn't understand, always with an urgency that made her chest tight. How bad is it? She asked one night, finding him in his office at 3 a.m. We're winning. He didn't look up from the documents spread across his desk. 2 of their warehouses are gone, their supply lines are disrupted, and 3 of their captains have defected to my side. And casualties? Some. His voice was carefully neutral. None that matter. Adrian, I don't mean it like that. He rubbed his eyes, suddenly looking every one of his 33 years. I mean, none of my people. We've been surgical, precise. The Volkovs are bleeding fighters while we're gaining ground. Natalie moved behind him, started massaging the tension from his shoulders. When will it end? Soon. Their leadership is fracturing. Another week, maybe two, and they'll either surrender or cease to exist. He leaned into her touch. How are you feeling? The baby? We're fine. Dr. Chen says everything is progressing normally. Good, that's good. He caught her hand, pulled her around to face him. I need you to promise me something. What? If something happens to me, if the worst occurs, you'll take our son and disappear. I have accounts set up in your name, properties in cities where no one knows me. Marcus has all the information. You'll never have to worry about money or safety. Nothing is going to happen to you. Promise me anyway. The fear in his voice was genuine, and it terrified her. I promise. But you're not going anywhere. No, I'm not. He stood, pulled her close. Because I have too much to live for. The kiss that followed was desperate, clinging, weighted with all the things they couldn't say. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. When this is over, he said quietly, I'm taking you away. Somewhere warm and safe where we can just be together before the baby comes. I'd like that. Italy, maybe. Or the coast of Spain. Somewhere you can breathe without security watching your every move. As long as you're there, I don't care where we go. His smile was soft, genuine. Come to bed. You shouldn't be up this late. Neither should you. I'll come in a few minutes. I just need to finish reviewing these reports. But Natalie knew he'd be there for hours yet, planning and strategizing and carrying the weight of decisions that would determine who lived and who died. So she kissed him once more and left him to his war, trusting that he'd come back to her when he could. The turning point came on a Tuesday. Natalie was reading in the living room, trying to focus on her business textbook despite the baby's constant gymnastics, when Adrian burst through the door with an expression she'd never seen before, triumph mixed with relief. It's over, he said. What? The war. It's over. Viktor Volkov just called to negotiate surrender. He crossed to her, pulled her to her feet, kissed her hard. We won. The relief was so sudden, so overwhelming, that Natalie started crying. It's really over? Really over. He's pulling his operations out of New York entirely, relocating to Philadelphia. In exchange, I don't hunt down every member of his family and eliminate them. Adrian was grinning, actually grinning. We're safe, Natalie. You and the baby are safe. She should have been happy, should have felt nothing but relief. Instead, something cold settled in her stomach. What did you have to do to make him surrender? The grin faded. Do you really want to know? No. Yes, I don't know. She pulled back, studying his face. I need to know what you're capable of, what our son's father is capable of. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, I took his brother. Not to kill him. I don't hurt innocents, and Dmitry Volkov is more accountant than criminal. But I made it very clear that if Viktor didn't stand down, his brother would pay the price for his pride. You used him as leverage. Yes. And if Viktor hadn't surrendered, then I would have done what I had to do. His voice was steady, unflinching. I won't apologize for protecting you, Natalie. Not ever. She understood the logic, even agreed with it on some level. But the casual way he discussed using human lives as bargaining chips made her realize how different their worlds still were. She'd been raised to believe in rules, in systems, in the sanctity of due process. Adrian's world had no such illusions. Where is he now, Dmitry? On a plane back to Philadelphia with his brother, unharmed, well-fed, and with a very clear understanding of what happens if the Volkovs ever return to New York. He took her hands. I kept my word, Natalie. I protected you without becoming the monster you were afraid I'd be. You threatened an innocent man. I leveraged a resource to end a war without further bloodshed. It's not clean, but it worked. He paused. Are you angry with me? She considered the question honestly. Was she angry, disappointed, relieved? I don't know what I am. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad we're safe. But I'm also scared of how easy this seems for you. It's not easy. Nothing about this is easy. Adrian's voice was rough. Do you think I enjoy making these choices? That I sleep well at night knowing the things I've done? I think you're very good at compartmentalizing. I have to be. If I let myself feel the weight of every decision, every death, every compromise I've made, I drown in it. He released her hands, moved to the window. But I feel it with you, all of it. You make me want to be better, to do better, and that's terrifying because better doesn't always mean effective. Natalie moved to stand beside him, looking out over the city that had become her prison and her sanctuary. I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to remember that our son will learn from you, that he'll see how you solve problems and think that's how the world works. Then I'll teach him to be better than me, to build instead of destroy, to use power to protect instead of control. He looked at her. I meant what I said before. When the transition is complete, I'm stepping back, building legitimate businesses, creating something our son can inherit without shame. How long will that take? Years, but I'll start now, today. He turned to face her fully. I love you, Natalie, and I love the man I am when I'm with you. That's worth more than any empire. The declaration was so earnest, so vulnerable, that Natalie felt her remaining defenses crumble. I love you too. Even when you scare me, even when I don't understand your choices. I love you. They stood together in the fading afternoon light, holding each other while the city spread out beneath them. Somewhere out there, Viktor Volkov was licking his wounds and planning his retreat. Somewhere, people were celebrating or mourning the war's end. But in the penthouse, there was just the two of them and the promise of something better. The baby kicked hard, and Adrian laughed, pressing his hand to the movement. He's strong, he said with pride. He's stubborn, like his father or his mother. Adrian knelt, pressing his ear to her belly. Hey, little one, you're safe now. Your mom and I made sure of it. Watching him talk to their unborn son, Natalie felt something shift inside her. This was real. This family they were building, this life they were creating, it was messy and complicated and probably doomed to be difficult, but it was theirs, and she was done running from it. The reprieve lasted exactly 5 days. Natalie was in the nursery, organizing tiny clothes that seemed impossibly small, when she heard raised voices from the living room. She moved toward the sound, her body awkward and heavy at 7 months pregnant, and found Adrian arguing with a man she didn't recognize. You can't be serious, Adrian was saying, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. Dead serious. The commission wants a meeting. They have concerns about how you handled the Volkov situation. The man was older, gray-haired, with the kind of face that had seen too much violence to be surprised by anything. You don't get to refuse. I'm not refusing. I'm saying the timing is inconvenient. Your personal life doesn't change commission protocol. The man's eyes flicked to Natalie, dismissive and cold. Bring her if you're worried about security, but you will attend. Who is this? Natalie asked, moving to stand beside Adrian. No one important, Adrian said, but his jaw was tight. Antonio Marchesi. I sit on the commission that oversees organized operations in the Northeast. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. And you must be the reason Caruso went to war. I'm the mother of his child. That's all you need to know. Feisty. I like that. Marchesi turned back to Adrian. Tomorrow night, the usual place. Don't be late. He left without waiting for a response, and the silence that followed was oppressive. What was that about? Natalie asked. Politics. The commission oversees the major families, makes sure we're not stepping on each other's toes too much. They're concerned I acted unilaterally against the Volkovs. Did you? Yes, but I had cause. Adrian ran a hand through his hair. They're going to push back, try to impose some kind of penalty for not consulting them first. It's all posturing. Is it dangerous? No, the commission doesn't do violence, they mediate it. This is just bureaucracy with bigger stakes. But something in his tone made Natalie nervous. Can I come with you? Absolutely not. Commission meetings are no place for civilians. I'm not a civilian. I'm your family. She took his hand. And if they're discussing you, I want to be there. Natalie, please. I'm tired of being protected from your world. If we're going to do this, really do this, I need to see all of it, even the parts you want to hide. Adrian looked at her for a long moment, and she saw the conflict in his expression, the desire to keep her safe warring with the understanding that she was right. Okay, but you stay close to me. You don't speak unless spoken to, and if I say we leave immediately. Understood? Understood. The meeting was held in a restaurant in Little Italy, closed to the public for the evening. Natalie walked in on Adrian's arm, very aware of the stares that followed them. She'd dressed carefully, a maternity dress that was elegant without being flashy, her hair pulled back, minimal jewelry. She wanted to project calm competence, not vulnerability. The commission consisted of 5 men, all older than Adrian, all carrying themselves with the weight of authority. They sat at a long table like judges at a trial, and the symbolism wasn't lost on Natalie. Caruso and guest. Antonio Marchesi gestured to chairs across from them. Please sit. Adrian held Natalie's chair, his hand lingering on her shoulder for a moment before taking his own seat. Gentlemen, I understand you have concerns about my recent actions. Concerns is putting it mildly, another man said, heavy-set, with a thick Brooklyn accent. You went to war with the Volkovs without commission approval. That violates protocol. The Volkovs threatened my family. That supersedes protocol. Does it? Marchesi leaned forward. Because from where we sit, it looks like you used a personal matter as an excuse to eliminate competition. The Volkovs have been pushing into established territories for years. Everyone at this table knows they were a problem that needed addressing. Adrian's voice was calm, reasonable. I simply took care of it before it became everyone's problem. By threatening an innocent civilian, Dmitry Volkov had no involvement in his brother's operations. And he's fine, completely unharmed. I used the minimum force necessary to achieve the desired result. The men exchanged looks, a silent conversation happening that Natalie couldn't interpret. Then the heavy-set man spoke again. The commission has discussed the matter. We're imposing a fine of $5 million and requiring you to cede the Brooklyn ports to neutral management. Absolutely not. Adrian's voice went hard. The ports are mine. I built that operation from nothing. Then you shouldn't have acted without authorization. I acted to protect my family. If the commission has a problem with that, perhaps the commission needs to reconsider its priorities. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. Natalie felt her heart hammering, felt the baby responding to her elevated stress. She wanted to reach for Adrian's hand, but didn't dare show weakness in front of these men. You're walking a dangerous line, Caruso, Marchesi said softly. The commission's authority exists for a reason. Without it, we have chaos. And without the ability to protect our families, we have nothing worth fighting for. Adrian stood and Natalie followed suit. I'll pay the fine, but the ports stay mine. If that's unacceptable, the commission can consider me outside its jurisdiction going forward. The threat hung in the air, a declaration of independence that could either be brilliant or suicidal. Natalie held her breath, waiting to see which way the moment would tip. Finally, Marchesi smiled. It was a cold expression, calculated. The ports can stay yours, for now. But understand, Caruso, you've used up your goodwill here. Next time you act unilaterally, there will be consequences. Severe ones. Understood. They left the restaurant in tense silence, Adrian's hand firm on her back as he guided her to the car. Once inside, away from watching eyes, he let out a long breath. That was a mistake, he said quietly. What do you mean? I just declared myself independent of the commission's authority. That makes me either incredibly powerful or incredibly vulnerable, depending on how the other families react. He looked at her, and there was fear in his eyes. I did it because they wanted to take something that keeps you safe. The ports generate revenue that funds security, operations, everything we need. Without them, I'm weaker, and weakness gets people killed. Natalie reached for his hand. Then we'll deal with whatever comes. Together. I'm pulling you deeper into this world every day, making you complicit in choices that could destroy us both. I chose this. I chose you. She squeezed his hand. Stop trying to protect me from the consequences of my own decisions. He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. I'm terrified I'm going to fail you. Fail him. Then don't. Be the man you promised to be. build something better. She pulled back to look at him. You said when this was over you'd start transitioning to legitimate business. Start now, tonight. Show the commission and everyone else that you're moving beyond this life. It's not that simple. Nothing about us is simple, but it's worth fighting for. Adrian kissed her then, deep and desperate, pouring all his fear and hope and love into the connection. When they finally pulled apart, his voice was steady with decision. Okay, we do this your way. I start the transition immediately, shore up our defenses, and build something our son can be proud of. He pressed his hand to her belly. No more wars, no more violence unless there's no other choice. I'm done being the monster. You were never the monster, Adrian. You were just scared. She covered his hand with hers. Now be brave. And in the darkness of the car, with the city lights streaming past and their son moving between them, they made a choice to fight for something better, to build instead of destroy, to trust that love could transform even the most dangerous foundations into something worth keeping. It wouldn't be easy, it wouldn't be clean, but it would be theirs. And that was enough. The transition started the next morning with a phone call that lasted 3 hours. Natalie woke to find Adrian's side of the bed empty. She'd stopped sleeping in the guest room 2 weeks ago, though neither of them had explicitly discussed the shift. She found him in his office, surrounded by legal documents and financial reports, speaking rapid Italian into his phone while making notes on a yellow pad. He looked up when she entered, gestured for her to sit, and continued his conversation. Natalie settled into the leather chair across from his desk, one hand absently rubbing her belly, where the baby was doing what felt like somersaults. See, understand. No, the timeline is non-negotiable. I need everything transferred within 6 months. A pause. I don't care if it's complicated. Make it work. Another pause. Bene, send me the preliminary documents by Friday. He hung up, set down the phone, and rubbed his eyes with the heels of his hands. That was my attorney in Milan. I'm buying a shipping company, completely legitimate, publicly traded, with clean books and a board of directors who actually believe in following laws. That's good, right? It's a start. I'm also liquidating 3 of my less savory operations and moving the capital into real estate development. He gestured to the papers spread across his desk. By this time next year, 70% of my income will be from legal sources. In 5 years, I want to be completely clean. Natalie moved around the desk to stand behind him, started massaging the tension from his shoulders. That's ambitious. It's necessary. The commission meeting made me realize how precarious my position is. I've built an empire on fear and loyalty, but that only works as long as I'm stronger than my enemies. The moment I show weakness, he stopped. I can't afford weakness. Not with you and the baby depending on me. So you're building something they can't take away. Exactly. Legitimate businesses have legal protections. Shareholders. Public accountability. It's harder to make someone disappear when their name is on quarterly reports. He caught her hand, kissed the palm. How are you feeling? You look tired. I'm 8 months pregnant. Tired is my default state. She smiled to soften the words. But I'm good. The baby is active, which Dr. Chen says is a good sign. Only 4 more weeks until he's here. The reality of that timeline hit Natalie like a wave. 4 weeks. 1 month. 30 days until she became a mother, until their son entered a world that was still far more dangerous than she wanted to acknowledge. Are you scared? She asked quietly. Terrified. I have no idea how to be a father. My own father was... He stopped, his jaw tightening. Let's just say I don't have a good template to follow. It was the first time he'd mentioned his family. Natalie had learned through careful observation that Adrian's past was a territory he didn't invite exploration of, but now the door was cracked open. What was he like? She asked carefully. Adrian was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Then, violent, cruel. He believed that power came from making people fear you, and he applied that philosophy to everyone. Business associates, enemies, family. His voice was flat, emotionless. I was 12 when I watched him beat a man to death for a perceived slight. 14 when he turned that violence on me for the first time. Natalie's hand stilled on his shoulders. Adrian, I killed him when I was 21. made it look like a rival family's hit, took over his operations, and spent the next decade building something different. He turned to look at her. I swore I'd never be like him, that if I ever had children, I'd protect them instead of terrorizing them. But sometimes I look in the mirror and see his eyes looking back. You're nothing like him. How can you be sure? Because you're scared of becoming him. Because you're willing to change your entire life to give our son something better. She moved around to face him, took his face in her hands. Bad fathers don't worry about being bad fathers. They just are. He pulled her close as her pregnant belly would allow, and held on like she was the only thing keeping him anchored. I love you. I need you to know that. Whatever happens, whatever I have to do, I love you and our son more than anything. I know, I love you too. They stayed like that for a long moment, holding each other while the morning light streamed through the windows and the city woke up below them. Then Adrian's phone rang again, and the moment broke. I need to take this, he said apologetically. I'll make breakfast. But when she reached the kitchen, she found Marcus waiting, his expression grim. Mrs. Brooks, it's just Natalie. We've been over this. Natalie, we have a situation. The words made her blood run cold. What kind of situation? Someone's been asking questions about you, about the baby, about Mr. Caruso's movements. Marcus pulled out his phone, showed her surveillance photos of a man she didn't recognize. We picked him up on 3 different cameras near locations you frequent. He's trying to establish a pattern. Who is he? We don't know yet, but he's professional. Knows how to avoid most surveillance, changes his appearance, uses cash only. Whoever hired him has resources. Natalie's hand went instinctively to her belly. Does Adrian know? Not yet. I wanted to give you a heads up before I briefed him. He's going to want to lock you down completely, and I thought you might prefer to prepare yourself first. The consideration was touching and terrifying in equal measure. Thank you, I think. For what it's worth, you're safe here. The building's security is some of the best in the city, and Mr. Caruso has people watching every approach. But we can't stay locked in here forever. No, you can't. Marcus pocketed his phone. I'll tell him now. Be ready for him to be difficult about this. Difficult was an understatement. Adrian's reaction to the news was immediate and decisive. Natalie wasn't leaving the penthouse until they identified the threat and eliminated it. No doctor's appointments, no fresh air, no exceptions. That's ridiculous, Natalie said, trying to keep her voice level. I have a checkup with Dr. Chen tomorrow. I can't just skip it. She'll come here. I'll pay her triple her normal rate, set up a full examination room if necessary. But you're not going out there with someone actively surveilling you. Adrian, I can't live like this. I'm already going stir-crazy and you want to make it worse? I want to keep you alive. His voice rose, then dropped as he visibly fought for control. Someone is watching you, Natalie. Someone is gathering information about your patterns, your vulnerabilities, your life. That means they're planning something, and I can't risk you being out in the open when they make their move. So what's your plan? Keep me locked up until the baby comes? After? For the rest of our lives? If that's what it takes. The absoluteness of his statement hung in the air between them. Natalie felt her temper flare, felt the frustration of months of restricted freedom finally boiling over. I didn't sign up to be a prisoner. You signed up to be the mother of my child. That comes with protection whether you like it or not. Protection, not imprisonment. There's a difference. Not when your life is at stake. Adrian moved closer, his expression pleading. Please, Natalie. Just until we know who this is and what they want, I can't focus on finding them if I'm worried about you being exposed. She wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her autonomy, but the fear in his eyes was genuine, and she understood it. Someone was watching her, someone was making plans, and whether she liked it or not, that made her vulnerable. 2 weeks, she said finally. You have 2 weeks to figure this out. After that, I'm leaving this penthouse whether you approve or not. 2 weeks. I can work with that. Relief washed over his features. I'll have Dr. Chen come tomorrow, set up whatever you need to be comfortable, and I'll find whoever this is, I promise. The promise felt both reassuring and ominous. Natalie knew what Adrian was capable of when protecting what was his, and she wasn't entirely sure she wanted to know what he'd do when he found the man in the photographs. Dr. Chen arrived the next afternoon with a portable ultrasound machine and enough medical equipment to stock a small clinic. She examined Natalie thoroughly, declared everything progressing normally, and discreetly didn't ask why she was making a house call to a penthouse with more security than most government buildings. Everything looks perfect, Dr. Chen said, packing up her equipment. The baby's positioned well, heartbeat is strong, and you're measuring right on schedule. I'd say you're looking at delivery within the next 3 to 4 weeks. That's soon? First babies can surprise you. Could be tomorrow, could be a month from now. But based on your progression, I'd guess closer to 3 weeks. She smiled. Are you ready? Natalie looked at her belly, at the life that would soon be entering the world, and felt equal parts excitement and terror. I have no idea. No one ever is. But you have good support, good resources, and a very determined partner who's called my office 4 times this week to confirm you're getting the best care possible. After Dr. Chen left, Natalie found Adrian in the nursery, staring at the crib they'd assembled together with an expression that was part wonder, part fear. 3 weeks, she said from the doorway. I heard. He turned to her. Are you scared? More than I've ever been in my life. She moved to stand beside him. What if I'm terrible at this? What if I can't protect him the way he needs? You won't be alone. We'll figure it out together. He put his arm around her shoulders, pulled her close. And if we mess up, which we will, we'll fix it and do better next time. That simple? That complicated? His smile was gentle. But we have each other. That's more than I ever had. They stood together in the room they'd created for their son, surrounded by tiny clothes and stuffed animals and all the hopes they'd poured into this space. Outside, the sun was setting over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. I found him, Adrian said quietly. Natalie's stomach dropped. The man who was watching me? His name is Thomas Garrett, former military, current private investigator. He was hired 3 weeks ago by, he paused, his jaw tightening, by Antonio Marchesi. The name landed like a bomb. The commission member? Why would he? Because he wants to know if you're a weakness he can exploit. If the baby is leverage he can use against me. Adrian's voice was deadly calm. He's testing my defenses, looking for vulnerabilities. And once he finds them, he'll either use them to control me or eliminate them to send a message. What are you going to do? What I have to do. He turned to face her fully. I'm going to make it very clear that you and our son are permanently off limits, that even thinking about using you as leverage is signing a death warrant. Adrian, if you kill a commission member, I'm not going to kill him, I'm going to ruin him. The distinction was somehow more frightening than outright violence. By Monday morning, Antonio Marchesi will wake up to find his bank accounts frozen, his properties seized, and evidence of his more illegal activities delivered to federal prosecutors. He'll spend the next decade fighting charges while his empire crumbles around him. Can you do that? I already have. The pieces have been in motion since Marcus confirmed his involvement. He took her hands. I told you no one touches my family. I meant it. Marchesi made the mistake of testing that, and now he'll pay the price. Natalie should have been horrified by the casual destruction of a man's life. Instead, she felt a savage satisfaction that Adrian was willing to go to war to protect them. What happens after? Will the other commission members retaliate? They'll do nothing, because they'll see what happens when someone threatens me, and they'll remember why they were afraid of me in the first place. His voice was cold, certain. The commission works on fear and respect. Marchesi forgot that. I'm going to remind everyone else. And us? What happens to us? We disappear for a while. I have a house in the Hamptons, isolated, secure, with enough medical equipment to handle a delivery if necessary. We'll go there tomorrow, stay until after the baby comes and the situation with the commission stabilizes. You have this all planned out. I've been planning it since the moment I saw Garrett's photograph. He squeezed her hands. I won't let anything happen to you, Natalie. Not Marchesi, not the commission, not anyone. You and our son are my priority. Everything else is just noise. The conviction in his voice was absolute, and Natalie felt her last reservations crumble. This was who Adrian was. Ruthless and protective, dangerous and devoted, willing to burn down the world to keep his family safe. It should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. Okay, she said, we go to the Hamptons. We have the baby. We figure out what comes next. Together. Together. The move happened so quickly, Natalie barely had time to process it. By noon the next day, they were in Adrian's car. Bulletproof windows, reinforced frame, driver who was definitely armed, heading east out of the city. Marcus rode in a separate vehicle with two other security personnel, maintaining a protective formation that would have been paranoid if it wasn't absolutely necessary. The house in the Hamptons was stunning, modern architecture nestled into coastal landscape, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean and enough space to comfortably house a small army. Which, Natalie realized as security personnel unpacked equipment and established perimeters, was probably the point. "It's beautiful," she said, standing on the deck and watching waves crash against the shore. "It was my father's. I almost sold it after he died, but something made me keep it." Adrian wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands settling on her belly. "Now I'm glad I did. Our son can grow up here in the summers, learn to swim in the ocean, build sandcastles." "You're imagining a future." "I'm imagining our future." He kissed the side of her neck. "One where we're safe and happy and together." "Is that naive?" "Maybe, but I like it anyway." They settled into an unexpected routine over the next week. Mornings were quiet. Breakfast on the deck, watching the sunrise over the water, feeling the baby move between them. Afternoons, Adrian worked from his office while Natalie studied for her business classes or read books about parenting that made her more anxious than prepared. Evenings, they walked the beach together, security maintaining a discreet distance while they talked about everything and nothing. It was the most normal Natalie's life had felt in months, and she treasured every moment of it. But normal was an illusion, and it shattered on a Tuesday morning with a phone call that made Adrian's face go pale. "When?" he said into the phone, his voice deadly quiet. "How many?" "I see." "No, stay put. I'm on my way." He hung up, and the expression on his face made Natalie's blood run cold. "What happened?" "The penthouse was hit last night. Professional crew bypassed security, tore the place apart looking for something." His hands clenched into fists. "They didn't find us, but they made their point." "Who was it?" "Unknown, but the timing suggests it's connected to the Marchese situation." He pulled out his phone, started making calls. "I'm moving you to the safe room, now." "Adrian? No arguments, please." The fear in his voice was genuine. "If they found the penthouse, they might find this place. I need you somewhere I know you're absolutely secure." The safe room turned out to be exactly what it sounded like. A reinforced space in the basement with its own power supply, food stores, and communications equipment. It looked like something out of a spy movie, and Natalie felt ridiculous being escorted there by 4 armed men. "This is insane," she muttered, settling onto the surprisingly comfortable couch. "This is necessary," Adrian corrected, kneeling in front of her. "I'm going back to the city to handle this. Marcus and his team will stay with you. You don't open this door for anyone except me, understand?" "You're leaving?" "I have to. Whoever did this needs to learn that attacking my property has consequences." He took her face in his hands. "I'll be back before nightfall. I promise. But I need to know you're safe while I'm gone." Natalie wanted to argue, wanted to insist she go with him, wanted to do anything except sit in a basement while he walked into danger. But the baby chose that moment to kick hard, and the reminder of what was at stake made her nod. "Be careful," she whispered. "Always." He kissed her, deep and desperate. "I love you. Both of you." Then he was gone, and Natalie was alone in a bunker with 4 security guards and nothing but her thoughts for company. The hours crawled past like years. Natalie tried to read, tried to sleep, tried to focus on anything except the gnawing fear in her gut. Marcus checked in periodically, his updates vague but reassuring. Mr. Caruso had arrived in the city. Mr. Caruso was handling the situation. Mr. Caruso would return as scheduled. But as sunset approached with no word, Natalie's anxiety transformed into something sharper. What if something had gone wrong? What if whoever attacked the penthouse had been waiting for Adrian to return? She was spiraling into worst-case scenarios when the secure phone rang. Marcus answered it, listened for a moment, and his expression went carefully blank. "What?" Natalie demanded. "What happened?" "Mr. Caruso has been delayed. He said to tell you not to worry, that everything is under control." "If everything was under control, he wouldn't be delayed. What's really happening?" Marcus hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell her. There was a confrontation. Mr. Caruso is unharmed, but the situation is more complicated than anticipated. Define complicated. The people who hit the penthouse weren't working for Marchese. They were working for someone else entirely, someone who's been watching Mr. Caruso's operations for months, waiting for an opportunity. Who? We don't know yet, but they made a mistake tonight. They left evidence. Mr. Caruso is tracking it down now. The clinical way Marcus described what was likely violence and destruction made Natalie's stomach turn. When will he be back? He said by midnight at the latest. Midnight came and went with no sign of Adrian. 1 in the morning, 2. At 3, Natalie was pacing the safe room like a caged animal, one hand on her aching back and the other on her belly, where the baby seemed to sense her distress and was moving constantly. At 3:30, the secure door finally opened and Adrian walked through. He looked like he'd been through a war. His shirt was torn, there was blood on his hands and a cut above his eyebrow, and the expression on his face was haunted in a way she'd never seen before. What happened? Natalie asked, moving to him despite Marcus's protests. I found them. The people who've been targeting us. His voice was hollow. It wasn't about territory or revenge or any of the usual reasons. It was personal. Personal how? Remember I told you about my father? How I made his death look like a rival hit? He sank onto the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. Turns out his cousin believed it. Spent the last 12 years planning revenge. Tonight, he made his move. Is he dead? Along with most of his organization. Adrian's voice was flat. I didn't want to kill him. I tried to talk him down, tried to explain, but he wouldn't listen. And when he pulled a gun, he stopped, his hands shaking. I had no choice. Natalie sat beside him, took his bloody hands in hers. You did what you had to do. Did I? Or did I just prove I'm exactly like my father, solving every problem with violence, leaving bodies in my wake? He looked at her, and there were tears tracking down his face. What if our son grows up and sees me the way I saw my father? What if I'm creating the same cycle all over again? You're not, because you care about breaking the cycle, because you're willing to question yourself, to change, to build something better. She squeezed his hands. Your father never would have done that. How can you be sure? Because I know you, the real you, underneath all the violence and power, and that man is good. That man is worth loving. He pulled her close, buried his face against her shoulder, and she felt his body shake with silent sobs. They stayed like that for a long time, holding each other while the weight of what he'd done settled over them both. Finally, he pulled back, wiped his eyes. It's over. Really over. My father's cousin was the last person with a blood claim against me. With him gone, the vendetta dies. So we're safe? As safe as we'll ever be. He managed a weak smile. No more wars, no more enemies lurking in shadows, just us and our son and the life we're trying to build. I'll hold you to that. Please do. He stood, offered her his hand. Come on, let's get out of this bunker and go watch the sunrise. I could use some beauty after all this ugliness. They walked to the beach together as dawn painted the sky in shades of pink and gold. Adrian held her close, one hand on her belly, and for the first time since she'd discovered her pregnancy, Natalie felt genuinely hopeful about their future. The baby kicked hard, and Adrian laughed, a genuine sound of joy that made Natalie's heart soar. He's ready to meet us, Adrian said. Another couple weeks yet. Maybe. Or maybe he's as impatient as his mother. Natalie was about to respond when she felt it, a sudden rush of warmth, a pressure that made her gasp. She looked down to find water streaming down her legs, soaking into the sand. Adrian, she said, her voice tight with sudden fear. I think my water just broke. His expression shifted from peaceful to panic in an instant. Now? But you're not due for another 2 weeks. Apparently our son didn't get that memo. Another contraction hit, harder than anything she'd felt before. We need to get to the hospital, now. What followed was controlled chaos. Marcus calling ahead to the hospital, security scrambling to prepare the car, Adrian alternating between calm competence and barely suppressed panic. They made it to the car in record time, and as they sped toward Manhattan, Natalie gripped Adrian's hand and tried to remember everything Dr. Chen had told her about labor. "You're going to be fine," Adrian kept saying like a mantra. "Both of you are going to be fine." "I know," Natalie managed between contractions. "I just wasn't expecting it to hurt this much." "We're almost there. 10 more minutes." But 10 minutes felt like hours, and by the time they pulled up to the hospital, Natalie was ready to commit violence herself. Dr. Chen met them at the entrance with a wheelchair and a team of nurses. "Looks like someone decided to make an early entrance," she said calmly. "Let's get you upstairs and see how far along you are." The next several hours were a blur of pain and pressure, and Adrian's voice anchoring her through every contraction. Somewhere around hour 6, when Natalie was convinced she couldn't do this anymore, Dr. Chen announced it was time to push. "You can do this," Adrian said, his hand gripping hers. "You're the strongest person I know." "I hate you for getting me pregnant," Natalie panted. "That's fair. Hate me all you want. Just keep pushing." And she did. Through the pain and exhaustion and fear, she pushed, until finally, miraculously, a cry split the air, and Dr. Chen was holding up a tiny, perfect human being. "It's a boy," she announced unnecessarily. "A very healthy, very loud boy." They placed him on Natalie's chest, and the world contracted to just the three of them, her, Adrian, and this impossibly small person they'd created. He had dark hair like his father and tiny fists that waved in the air like he was already ready to fight the world. "Hey, little one," Natalie whispered, tears streaming down her face. "We've been waiting for you." Adrian was crying too, openly and unashamedly, his hand gentle on their son's head. "He's perfect. You're both perfect." For a moment there was nothing but joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Then the door burst open and everything went to hell. Marcus moved first, his body a shield between the door and Natalie's hospital bed. Adrian was half a second behind, positioning himself to block their son from view. But the man who entered wasn't armed. He was wearing a hospital security uniform and holding his hands up in surrender. "Mr. Caruso, we have a situation in the lobby," he said quickly. "Multiple individuals demanding access to the maternity ward. They're claiming family rights." Adrian's expression went deadly. "How many?" "4 that we can see, likely more outside." The guard's voice was steady despite the tension. "They're making a scene, threatening legal action. Hospital administration is minutes away from calling the police." "Let them call." Adrian turned to Dr. Chen, who was still holding their son. "How fast can you discharge them?" "She just gave birth an hour ago, Mr. Caruso. She needs rest, monitoring. She needs to be somewhere safe more than she needs monitoring. Please." "Doctor." Chen looked between Adrian's face and the security guard's tense posture, and something in her expression shifted. She'd been Adrian's doctor long enough to understand that his world operated on different rules. "Give me 20 minutes to complete the paperwork and basic checks. But I'm sending a nurse with you, and you're bringing them both back in 48 hours for a full examination. Non-negotiable. Done. Marcus, secure the private exit. No one gets through." The next 20 minutes were controlled chaos. Nurses moved in and out, completing checks on both Natalie and the baby with efficiency that suggested they'd done this before. Dr. Chen worked on discharge papers while simultaneously explaining post-delivery care in rapid-fire detail that Natalie tried desperately to absorb through her exhaustion. "Who are they?" Natalie asked quietly, holding their son close. He'd fallen asleep after nursing, his tiny face peaceful against her chest. "The people downstairs?" "I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out." Adrian's voice was ice. "Marcus is pulling security footage now." 10 minutes later, Marcus returned with a tablet showing camera stills from the lobby. Natalie recognized one of the faces immediately, Antonio Marchesi, looking furious and determined. "He brought muscle," Marcus said, swiping through images. 3 bodyguards, all armed based on their stance. "They're demanding to see you, claiming the commission has authority over family matters involving MAID members." "The commission has no authority over my son." Adrian's voice could have cut glass. "Tell hospital security that those men are trespassing and should be removed. If they resist, call the police. I'll deal with the fallout." "They're claiming you kidnapped Natalie, that she's being held against her will." "Then let's solve that problem permanently." Adrian turned to Natalie. When we get downstairs, I need you to make it very clear to Marchese and anyone else watching that you're here by choice. Can you do that? You want me to confront them? Now? Natalie looked down at the baby sleeping in her arms, felt the exhaustion pulling at every cell in her body. Adrian, I just gave birth. I know, and I'm sorry, but if we leave without addressing this, they'll claim you were coerced. It'll give them ammunition to come after us legally, to involve authorities, to make our lives hell. His expression softened. I wouldn't ask if there was any other way. Natalie looked at their son, at his perfect face and tiny hands, and felt something fierce ignite in her chest. No one was going to use her or her child as a weapon. Not Marchese, not the commission, not anyone. Okay, but you stay with me the entire time. I wouldn't be anywhere else. Doctor. Chen discharged them with a portable bassinet and enough medical supplies to stock a small pharmacy. A nurse, a capable-looking woman named Elena, who apparently had experience with complicated family situations, accompanied them as promised. The group made their way to the private elevator with Marcus leading and 2 additional security personnel flanking them. The lobby was exactly as chaotic as expected. Marchese stood near the main desk with his bodyguards, arguing with hospital security while a crowd of visitors and staff watched nervously. The moment the elevator doors opened and Adrian stepped out, every conversation died. Marchese, Adrian said, his voice carrying across the space, you're trespassing. I'm exercising the Commission's oversight authority. We have concerns about the welfare of Ms. Brooks and her child. Marchese's eyes flickered to Natalie, still in the wheelchair with their son in her arms. She appears to be leaving against medical advice. She's leaving because she chooses to. Natalie, would you like to address the Commission's concerns? Natalie took a breath, summoning energy she didn't have. I'm here by choice. I'm leaving by choice. My son and I are safe, healthy, and exactly where we want to be. If you have a problem with that, it's your problem, not mine. You're being manipulated by a dangerous criminal. We can offer you protection, resources. I don't need your protection. I have everything I need. She looked directly at Marchese, let him see the steel in her expression. And if you or anyone associated with the Commission approaches me or my child again, I'll file harassment charges. I'll go to the media. I'll make your life exactly as complicated as you're trying to make mine. The threat landed in the silence like a bomb. Marchese's face went red with rage, but before he could respond, Adrian stepped forward. You heard her. She's made her position clear. Now get out of this hospital before I have you removed. This isn't over, Caruso. The commission has no authority over my family. You want to come after me? Fine. Business is business, but the moment you involved her, you crossed a line. Adrian's voice dropped to something deadly. And you know what happens to people who cross my lines. Marchese held his gaze for a long moment, and Natalie saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. Whatever he saw in Adrian's expression made him step back. This conversation isn't finished, Marchese said, but he was already moving toward the exit. Yes, it is, Adrian replied quietly. It finished the moment you threatened my son. They watched Marchese and his bodyguards leave, the tension in the lobby slowly dissipating as normal hospital noise resumed. Only then did Adrian exhale, some of the rigidity leaving his posture. Can we go home now? Natalie asked, exhaustion making her voice shake. Yes. Let's get you both somewhere safe. The drive back to the penthouse, which had been cleaned and secured in their absence, felt surreal. Natalie sat in the back seat with their son sleeping in a car seat that looked impossibly large for his tiny body, watching the city stream past and trying to process everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. She'd given birth, become a mother, confronted a mob boss in a hospital lobby while holding her newborn son. It was the kind of day that should have broken her, but instead she felt stronger than ever. What are you thinking? Adrian asked quietly. That my life is insane, that I should probably be more afraid than I am, that our son is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She reached for Adrian's hand. That I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. His grip tightened on hers. I'm going to make this right. The commission, Marchese, all of it. I'm going to build something safe for you both. I know you will. The penthouse had been transformed in their absence. The nursery was fully stocked and organized, A night nurse was waiting to help with the first few days, and Marcus had established a security protocol that would have impressed a head of state. But more than that, there was a feeling of home, of safety carved out of chaos. That first night was a blur of feeding and diaper changes and the kind of exhaustion that went bone deep. Natalie had imagined motherhood as many things, but the reality was simultaneously harder and more profound than anything she'd anticipated. Their son, they still hadn't agreed on a name, had strong opinions about everything and the lungs to express them. "He's perfect," Adrian whispered during a 3 a.m. feeding, watching with wonder as his son nursed. "He's loud. Takes after his mother." Natalie would have argued, but she was too tired. Instead, she leaned against Adrian's shoulder and let herself exist in this moment, messy and exhausted and more in love than she'd ever imagined possible. Over the next few days, they settled into something resembling routine. The night nurse, Maria, turned out to be a lifesaver, experienced, calm, and completely unfazed by the security presence. Dr. Chen made a house call for the 48-hour checkup and declared both mother and baby thriving. "You're healing well," she told Natalie. "Better than I expected, honestly. But take it easy for at least another week. No lifting anything heavier than the baby, no strenuous activity, and definitely no confrontations with organized crime figures in public places." That was one time. "Once is enough." Dr. Chen's smile was gentle. "You did well, though. Both of you did. He's a beautiful baby." After she left, Natalie found Adrian in the nursery, holding their son and humming something that might have been a lullaby. The sight made her heart ache with tenderness. "We need to name him," she said from the doorway. "I know. I've been thinking about it." Adrian looked down at the baby in his arms. "I want him to have his own identity. Not my father's name, not family legacy, just his own." "What about James? It's strong, classic. James Caruso." "James?" Adrian tested the name, smiled. "I like it. James Brooks Caruso?" The hyphenation surprised her. "You want him to have my name too?" "You carried him for 9 months, nearly starved yourself protecting him, gave birth to him. He's as much yours as mine. More, maybe." Adrian met her eyes. "Besides, Brooks Caruso sounds like someone who can navigate both our worlds. Someone who can build bridges." James Brooks Caruso. Natalie moved closer, looked down at their son. "What do you think, Jamie? Does that work for you?" The baby, James, yawned in response, which they chose to interpret as approval. The peace lasted exactly 6 days. Natalie was nursing James in the living room when Marcus entered with an expression that made her stomach drop. "We have a problem," he said without preamble. "The commission is filing a lawsuit. They're claiming Mr. Caruso used intimidation to coerce your statement at the hospital, and they're seeking a court order for wellness checks." "That's ridiculous. I spoke freely." "We know that, but they have 3 witnesses willing to testify that you appeared frightened and under duress. They're building a narrative that you're being held prisoner." Marcus pulled out his tablet, showed her legal documents. "They filed 2 hours ago. There's a hearing scheduled for next week." Adrian appeared from his office, his expression thunderous. "Let them file. We'll countersue for harassment, defamation, and about 15 other things my lawyers are currently compiling." "It gets worse," Marcus continued. "Someone leaked the story to the press. By tonight, every news outlet in the city will be running stories about the mob boss, his captive girlfriend, and their newborn son." The words hit Natalie like a physical blow. "They're going to make us a spectacle." "They're trying to force my hand," Adrian corrected. "Marchese thinks if he creates enough public pressure, I'll have to negotiate. Give up territory, pay tribute, accept the commission's authority over my family." "What are you going to do?" "Win." The certainty in his voice was absolute. "I'm going to prove publicly and permanently that you're here by choice, that our family is legitimate, and that the commission has no authority over either of us." "How?" "By giving them a story they can't twist." He turned to Natalie, and there was question in his eyes. "Marry me." The proposal hung in the air, improbable and perfect. Natalie felt her breath catch, felt James stir against her chest. "That's your solution? Marriage?" "It's not just a solution. It's what I want. What I've wanted since the moment I saw you on that bathroom floor and realized I'd do anything to keep you safe." Adrian moved closer, knelt beside her chair. "I love you, Natalie. I love our son. I want to build a life with you, not because of the commission or public pressure, but because you're the best thing that's ever happened to me. Adrian, I know the timing is terrible. I know we're in the middle of a crisis, but I also know that I want to wake up every morning for the rest of my life with you beside me. I want to watch James grow up. I want to build something legitimate and lasting and good. He took her hand. Marry me, please. Natalie looked at him. This man who'd turned her world upside down, who'd protected her and challenged her and loved her through impossible circumstances. Then she looked at James, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos surrounding them. Yes, she said, I'll marry you. His smile was brilliant, transforming his entire face. Really? Really. But we're doing this right. No rushed courthouse wedding, no crisis management. We take the time to do it properly. Agreed. But we announce it now. Today. Take away Marchese's narrative before he can build it. Within 2 hours, they drafted a press release. Natalie insisted on writing her own statement, making it clear in her own words that she was marrying Adrian by choice, that James was wanted and loved, that their family was legitimate and private. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Every news outlet in the city picked up the story, but the narrative had shifted. It was no longer about captivity and coercion, but about a modern love story. The struggling student and the powerful businessman. The unexpected pregnancy that became a family. It was messy and complicated, but it was also undeniably real. Marchese's lawsuit died in the media firestorm. Without a narrative of victimhood, the commission had no leverage. The wellness check order was denied, and the harassment claims Adrian filed moved forward with surprising speed. You won, Natalie said a week later, watching news coverage that had finally started to fade. We won, Adrian corrected. You're the one who stood up to them, who made it clear this was your choice. It was always my choice. Even when I was running from you, even when I was terrified, I chose this. I chose you. She settled James into his bassinet, then moved to stand beside Adrian at the window. What happens now? Now we get married. We raise our son. We build the life we want instead of the life circumstances forced on us. He wrapped his arm around her shoulders. And I keep my promise. I'm transitioning out of the family business. The shipping company deal closed yesterday, and I've started divesting from the more problematic operations. How long until you're completely out? 3 to 5 years, realistically. Some things can't be unwound quickly without causing chaos. But I'm moving as fast as I can. He paused. There's something else. I've been approached about starting a foundation, using my resources to help kids who grow up in situations like mine. Give them opportunities, education, a way out. The idea was so perfect, so exactly right, that Natalie felt tears prick her eyes. That's beautiful. It was your idea, really. You said our son deserves a father he can be proud of. I want to be that father, but I also want to be someone James can point to and say, my dad helped people. He already will. You helped me when I had nothing. You protected us. You chose to change. Because you gave me a reason to change. Adrian pulled her close, his hand settling on her lower back in a gesture that had become familiar. I love you, Natalie Brooks. Soon to be Natalie Brooks Caruso. I love you too. Even though you're complicated and dangerous and occasionally terrifying. Only occasionally? Don't push it. They stood together watching the city lights, and for the first time since that fateful night at the Metropolitan Club, Natalie felt genuine peace. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, adjustments, moments where Adrian's old life tried to pull him back. But they would face it together. The wedding happened 3 months later, in a private ceremony at the house in the Hamptons. Natalie wore a simple dress that accommodated her still recovering body, and Adrian looked devastating in a tailored suit. James, now sleeping through most nights and developing a personality that was equal parts stubborn and charming, was held by Marcus during the ceremony. Dr. Chen attended, along with Rita from the grocery store and a handful of people who'd supported Natalie through her hardest moments. Adrian's guest list was smaller: Marcus, his attorney, and a few business associates who'd proven themselves trustworthy. The commission sent a gift, but no representatives, which suited everyone fine. I, Adrian Caruso, take you, Natalie Brooks, to be my wife, Adrian said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. I promise to protect you, to honor you, to build a life worthy of the love you've shown me. I promise to be the father our son deserves and the partner you need. I promise to choose you every day for the rest of my life. Natalie's vows were simpler but no less meaningful. I choose you. I choose this family. I choose to believe in the future we're building together. I love you, Adrian, completely, forever. When they kissed, James made a noise that might have been approval or protest. With a 3-month-old, it was hard to tell. But the gathered guests laughed, and the tension that had characterized so much of their relationship finally, fully released. The reception was small and perfect. They danced on the deck while the sun set over the ocean, James sleeping peacefully in his carrier nearby. Natalie's feet hurt, and she was probably pushing her recovery too hard, but she didn't care. This moment, this perfect, improbable moment, was worth every difficulty that had led to it. Happy? Adrian asked, holding her close. Terrifyingly so. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong. We've survived the worst. Everything else is just details. He was wrong, of course. Life was never that simple. Over the next year, there were challenges. James's colic, sleepless nights, the slow process of Adrian extracting himself from his old life. There were moments when Natalie questioned everything, when the weight of being married to someone with Adrian's history felt overwhelming. But there were also moments of perfect joy. James's first smile, his first laugh, the day he took his first steps, holding on to both their hands for balance. Watching Adrian transform from a man defined by violence into a father who read bedtime stories and built elaborate block towers and worried about appropriate screen time. The foundation launched on James's first birthday, the Brooks Caruso Foundation for Youth Opportunity. It provided scholarships, mentoring, and support services for kids from difficult backgrounds. Adrian threw himself into it with the same intensity he'd once applied to his criminal empire, and Natalie watched him discover a passion for building up instead of tearing down. I never thought I could do this, he admitted one night after a long day of interviewing program directors. Be someone who helps instead of harms. You were always capable of it. You just needed a reason. Natalie settled beside him on the couch, their 2-year-old son finally asleep after a bath time battle. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us. Look what we built from absolutely nothing. He gestured around the penthouse, now filled with toys and family photos and the beautiful chaos of actual life. You finished your degree. I'm running legitimate businesses. James is healthy and happy. We did this. We did, Natalie agreed, though there were moments I wasn't sure we'd make it. Like when? Like when you came home with blood on your hands and I had to decide if I could live with what you'd done, or when the commission tried to take James, or any of the 100 other moments when the smart thing would have been to run. But you didn't run. No, I chose to stay, to fight, to believe we could build something better than what circumstances gave us. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I'm glad I did. So am I. Adrian kissed the top of her head. I love you, Natalie. Thank you for seeing past the monster to the man underneath. You were never a monster, just a man who did monstrous things to survive. She looked up at him. And now you're a man who does beautiful things to thrive. That's growth. They sat together in comfortable silence, listening to the city sounds filtering through the windows and James's soft breathing from the baby monitor. This was what Natalie had been searching for all along. Not perfection, but partnership. Not safety, but the courage to face danger together. Not an easy life, but a meaningful one. 5 years after that first night at the Metropolitan Club, Natalie stood in her office. Yes, her office, in the consulting firm she'd built from nothing, and looked at the framed photo on her desk. It showed Adrian and James on the beach, both laughing at something outside the frame, caught in a moment of pure joy. Her phone buzzed with a text from Adrian. Foundation board meeting ran long. Can you pick up Jamie from school? She typed back. Already on my way. Dinner at 7? Perfect. Love you. Love you too. Simple. Domestic. Normal. Exactly what she'd dreamed of when she was struggling to survive on 3 jobs and impossible dreams. James was waiting at the school entrance when she arrived, his backpack almost as big as he was, and his face lighting up when he saw her. Mom, guess what? I got a gold star in reading. That's amazing. We'll have to celebrate. Can we get ice cream? We'll see what your father says. They walked to the car hand in hand, James chattering about his day with the kind of enthusiasm that made everything else fade into background noise. This was what mattered. These moments. This life. This family they'd fought so hard to build and protect. That evening, sitting around the dinner table while James told Adrian about his gold star in excruciating detail, Natalie felt a wave of gratitude so intense it made her eyes water. "You okay?" Adrian asked, noticing her expression. "I'm perfect, just thinking about how far we've come." From a bathroom floor to here. His smile was gentle. "Pretty good journey." "The best journey." She reached for his hand across the table, held it while James continued his story, oblivious to the moment his parents were sharing. "I wouldn't change a single thing. Not even the scary parts? Especially not the scary parts. They made us who we are." After James went to bed, after the stories and songs and negotiations for just 5 more minutes, Natalie and Adrian stood in the nursery doorway, watching their son sleep. "We're thinking about having another," Adrian said quietly. "Not right now, but eventually. Give James a sibling." "Are you asking or telling?" "Asking. Always asking." He turned to face her. "What do you think?" Natalie considered the question, thought about everything a second child would mean: more chaos, less sleep, the challenge of balancing 2 kids with their careers and commitments. But she also thought about watching James become a big brother, about expanding this family they'd built from nothing. "I think yes. In a year or 2, when we're ready. But this time let's plan it instead of having it dropped on us during a crisis." "Deal." Adrian pulled her close, kissed her with the same intensity as that first night, but now layered with years of trust and partnership. "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a life worth living, for showing me what it means to build instead of destroy, for loving me when I didn't deserve it and holding me accountable when I needed it." He rested his forehead against hers. "For everything. You gave me just as much. You saved me when I was drowning, protected me when I was vulnerable, and loved me at my absolute worst." Natalie smiled. "We saved each other." "Yeah, we did." They stood together in the quiet apartment, holding each other while their son slept and the city hummed beyond the windows. Outside, the world continued its complicated dance of power and violence, love and loss. But inside, they'd carved out something precious, a family built on choice, strengthened by adversity, and sustained by a love that had survived everything thrown at it. Natalie Brooks Caruso had started her journey invisible and alone, running 3 jobs and chasing impossible dreams. She'd been terrified and pregnant, hiding from a man she thought would destroy her. But fear had transformed into courage. Hiding had become choosing, and the monster had revealed himself to be just a man who needed someone to believe in him. Now she stood in a life she'd never imagined but couldn't imagine living without. She had a husband who'd changed his entire world for her, a son who was growing up loved and protected, a career she'd built through sheer determination, and a future that held nothing but possibility. It wasn't the safe, boring life she'd once thought she wanted. It was complicated and sometimes challenging, built on foundations that weren't entirely clean. But it was hers, theirs, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. "Come to bed," Adrian said, tugging her hand. "James will be up at 6 demanding pancakes, and you need sleep." "Since when do you make pancakes?" "Since last week. I'm getting better at it. Only set off the smoke alarm twice." "My hero," Natalie said dryly, but she was smiling as they walked to their bedroom, the room they'd shared for years now, the bed where they'd held each other through nightmares and celebrated victories, where they'd built intimacy from trust and trust from honesty. As she drifted off to sleep in Adrian's arms, Natalie thought about that terrified girl on the bathroom floor, pregnant and alone and convinced her world was ending. If she could go back and tell that girl what was coming, the fear and the love, the danger and the safety, the monster who became a man, would she have believed it? Probably not. But she would have been grateful anyway. Because the best stories, Natalie had learned, weren't the ones where everything was easy. They were the ones where people chose to fight for something better, to transform fear into strength, to build families from the rubble of broken pasts and uncertain futures. They were stories like hers, complicated, messy, imperfect, beautiful, and absolutely, completely worth it.